All right, we'll move on to resolution 2025-04. And this was brought to me as basically opposition to Senate Bill 1, the way it was worded before it had been amended. So I took the task and had a phone call with Ben. So we took out the numbers that were associated with it originally and tried to leave the intent of the message being sent intact. Before I go on with more questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. I move to adopt second. Motion by Bill and a second by Matt. Other comments? Resolution opposing Senate Bill 1, whereas state leaders and lawmakers have advocated for and proposed multiple pieces of legislation in the 2025 legislative session that will cut residential and business personal property bills for homeowners and businesses and change how these tax liabilities are calculated. Whereas homeowners deserve affordable tax bills and adequate public services in exchange, whereas the proposals garnering the most attention would have significant and negative impact on municipal taxing units, and whereas a local income tax adoption option could be a helpful tool for some units, however, it's not at all adequate to replace the magnitude of what is being eliminated, making it a necessity rather than an option. Whereas with an essentially mandated income tax increase being the only alternative proposed by lawmakers, the homeowners who these tax measures endeavor to assist will be among the same individuals paying the income tax, making businesses the only recipient of the tax. And whereas those individuals who do not own their own home would see a tax increase, whereas if the proposed measures are adopted, the Delaware County Council will be forced to make significant cuts across all county services. And whereas with the stress of the measures being considered will put on Delaware County Department budget, bonding or saving money for new development will be nearly impossible, sending Indiana several steps back in our efforts to attract and retain a talented workforce. And whereas these unprecedented cuts in government services are being proposed when, despite the success of community crossings, municipalities and counties are employing legislators to at least preserve the status quo in terms of road funding so as to not compound the well-documented high percentage of Hoosier roads that continue to be in less than satisfactory condition. Whereas as of this date, the statewide local impact of the primary tax-related bills will cause widespread negative effect, increased tax burdens on individuals, before offering even more relief to businesses in an already business tax-friendly state. Whereas the impact of these significant real property and business property tax cuts will result in Delaware County losing significant tax revenues across its taxing units. And whereas the impact of Senate Bill 1 would eliminate funding on top of Delaware County's annual loss to local government units associated with constitutional property tax. Therefore, be resolved that the Delaware County Council opposes any tax policy that affects local units of government that does not come with a corresponding replacement revenue stream implemented by the state of Indiana and does no harm to the Delaware County Council's ability to carry out the expectations of its citizens and all Hoosiers now into the future. I think it's important just to state that out loud because, I think the sentiment is that, reduction of property taxes, regardless of your belief about whether you believe property taxes are valid or high or whatever the case may be, ultimately there's going to be an impact to local county government on anything that comes out of the legislature this year, meaning that we will see some level of leveling with no increase in tax revenue, potentially no increase in tax revenue, potentially a loss in tax revenue. All of that is unknown. The bill is in the House now, has been flipped over to the House. Our understanding, some of the feedback I've received is that, the House will add back some of those cuts, and so that the Senate did not deal with, and so we're most likely going to see a hit to county tax revenue. To comment, Senate Bill 1 started out as the governor's proposal, which was an absolute cut in property taxes and would have cut our revenue significantly. As it was originally introduced, my best guess was that we would need to reduce 60 to 75 counties. The Senate amended it to state that there would be no cut in our property tax revenue, but our max levy for 2026 would be the same as it is in 2027. It would be a 1% increase. 2028 would be a 2% increase. Our local legislators said, "Well, see, we're not cutting it." Well, yes, they are because of inflation. Inflation is running about 3% at the moment, and that seems to be a reasonable guess for the next couple of years. We're going to have to have employees anyway because our revenue is not keeping up with inflation. So again, my best guess was that would require us to reduce between 30 and 40. What's more disturbing to me is, first of all, the governor says that local government needs to be more efficient. And he says we're going to have to prove that we are being more efficient. To me, our budget is our proof. We go line by line every year. And there's not the current phrase is waste, fraud, and abuse in our county. But the other concerning attitude is just a misunderstanding of one local state senator from a neighboring county, said that property taxes have gotten out of control because of what local governments have done. We don't control property taxes. We haven't for the last 50 years. They're strictly controlled by the state. They set the assessment rules. They set our maximum levy. We appeal it, but never have. We live within it. And for them to think that we're the problem is more than irritating. It's maddening. And as my last comment would be that the governor got a 65% pay increase. Well said, Bill. Any other comments? Well, I think it's well documented that while I don't like property taxes, I can't figure out how else to fund the government. I like when I call up the sheriff, goes up in the fire department, things like that. I'm sure there's others on this board. I use the president to pay something mountain attack. But, and probably could say the same things I just, we've got to figure out a replacement plan, not just a cut plan. Michael Hicks had an interesting article in the paper yesterday, I believe. I don't know whether anybody saw it or not. His assessment was that Delaware County, the state of Indiana, has already probably one of the lowest property in the nation, and could not understand how the legislature could justify taking that revenue and decreasing it when it's already at a very, very, very low level. Nationwide. Yeah, for some of us who have lived in other states and other counties, we are afforded very low tax rates in the state of Indiana, which I enjoy, believe me. But you're right, that is exactly the case. And again, I think this comes down to a belief whether property taxes, theft, or however people describe it, that may be the case. We've had multiple conversations with Representative J.D. Prescott on his plan that he put forth in the House about how to replace revenue. I think the biggest grief here is the fact that there's not a revenue replacement strategy on the Senate Bill 1. That's my. I might also add that at some point there's a fair amount of our budget that's mandated by the state, but they don't give us any money to. Right. Always seems like those mandated costs really right. Any other comment? All right, hearing none, roll call please. Flanagan. Yes. Hughes. Yes. Vogel. Yes. Brookout. Yes. Camp. Yes. Piper. Wyatt. Yes. What's the council's pleasure for delivery of this? Assuming you want this resolution back to our local legislators as well, would you like me to include that with the magistrate? That'd be fine. I'd also like to make sure that this gets sent to Rick Green with the association. County Councilors is county. Yes. AIC. These are legislative. Rick Green. I don't have his name. Ryan Hoffman, that he's the councilor. Ryan. Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Thank you.
And then I have a question for Mayor Ridenour or Mr. Wright, if they could step up. Thank you, sir. Governor Braun has been talking about property tax reform, which could potentially cut property tax revenues by 15 to 20%. Those are different things we're hearing. I know that it has gone through several iterations. Do you have any projections on what Muncie is going to lose in property tax income just in general?
I know what the original SB1 stated, but that was already adjusted down by the Senate, and it's in conference committee now, so I wouldn't want to speculate on where it is at this point. But I'm pretty convinced something's going to happen.
Something's what's going to happen?
That there will be property tax reductions, and therefore cities, towns, schools, counties will all face possibly less revenue from that source.
Do you have any? I mean, I know you said.
No, I do not. I don't know. I've not heard any of the discussions today. I know there were several mayors there today, but they work. I don't know where it is at this point. I know it's in conference committee. So.
And so if we have property tax revenue losses, how are we going to address those?
Well, I think we will have to all get together and figure out the best method.
Mhm.
I mean, to speculate is probably not ideal. There's old Chinese proverbs that say 80% of what you worry about doesn't come to pass. So why don't we wait and see where they are? They're just now into the second third. So let's let them get through the second third, then we'll get into the final third of the committee. But believe me, I talk with the state senators and state representatives regularly, and did today,
But do you,
stating my opinion, but I don't have a vote,
okay.
so I can't speculate where.
But you do understand why I've asked if we're going to be losing a significant portion of our property tax revenues,
Yeah.
why that would cause concern.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's why I said we'll all get together and figure it out.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I will say that I do have some numbers here. I mean, again, you're right. They're in committee right now.
Yeah,
We don't know
yeah,
where
it's
it's going
being
to shake
adjusted.
out.
Yeah,
But from the original, which started out at
yeah, I
yeah,
have.
yeah. Well, I'm just going to say it for the public
go ahead.
knowledge. Okay. So the original was starting off at like $2.5 million loss.
2.4.
And that's only the first year, then
Yeah,
continuing
that's
to
the
go.
first year. And it was 3.1
they've-
for the county.
Yeah. And we're just talking about the city because we're
Mhm.
city council right now, right? So
Right.
that's, and that's only the city, that doesn't include schools and
Correct.
library and all of that. Then the amended version
Mhm.
came down to 250,000. So I mean, they did, but right now, like you say, it's in committee. So we're talking somewhere in between there, right?
Correct.
So just, for the general public, so that we can
50,
know what
50.
kind of numbers we're talking about. 'Cause,
Yeah.
it's a lot
I
of
mean,
money.
we
It's a lot
will
of money.
feel it, whether it's 250,000,
Yeah.
and we will
Yes.
feel it a lot more
So like,
if it's
2.5
2.4 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But we'll work together and figure out the best route to go forward. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Chris Deegan, Muncie Police, I'm one of the administrators. I only have a couple things, and I'll be brief because I know that we've been at this for a minute now. I've been involved in numerous contracts going back to 2015 as a negotiation member, as president of AFOP, as a member of the City Police Administration. This is not something that I think should be taken lightly, but there's appropriate public forums to have these hard discussions. That's what government exists for. That's what we exist for. That's what you exist for. That's what this community exists for. Mr. Barber, you said yourself 3 or 4 meetings ago when I was up here presenting some information that this is your platform to vent. So I appreciate what you have to say in your opinions tonight. However, what I will say is the introduction or the possible introduction of anything tax related. That's the evil word in government, taxes, right? Let's all talk about it. You said talk about the elephant in the room. This forum exists for us to talk about this because we have a staffing crisis at the Muncie Police Department. And I have been banging that drum for 10 years, 10, personally. So I just think it's good that we all come together and try to work as a community to figure out what this resolution is. We cannot be as large of a community as we are and woefully underpay our public servants the way that we are. It is. And look at what we've done. You heard President Qualls. We've increased the salaries, if this one is approved, by 15% in 2 years. That's a home run 99% of the time. But we are so far behind from transgressions of years past. And I'm not even, it's beyond pointing fingers. It's beyond placing blame. It's beyond whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. This community has the obligation to protect the people that protect it because of the workload that they experience and what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. We have increased our EAP and psychological services programs tenfold over the last 5 years to try to provide resources to these people that help this community. So that is why these forums and these meetings exist, is so we can all talk about it. And I think that if we get to the point where somebody introduces a piece of legislation, it's an opportunity for everybody to talk about it. You don't have to like it. I don't want to pay any more taxes than I have to, but who knows where we'll end up. But the discussion has to be had. That's what I think what we're driving towards here is we've got to come together as a community and have these discussions because that's what this is for. That's all I got.
Hi.
Hi.
I wasn't going to speak, and I didn't tell any of my bosses that I was going to speak. I don't think they would have let me. And I'm nervous for some reason, even though,
Officer Kessler,
I
can you
know.
introduce yourself?
oh, I'm sorry. I'm Sergeant Amy Kessler. I'm with the Muncie Police Department. In 2001, I achieved my childhood dream to become a police officer with the City of Muncie Police Department. I can remember taking my test in a room filled with over 100 people trying for the same job that I was trying to get. Over my years of service, I have seen how the public's view of cops has changed dramatically. The uniform I wear resembles the same uniform worn by men and women who have done horrible things to other humans. You can't turn on a television or scroll on an app on your phone without seeing an incident where an officer wearing this distinctive uniform I have on is feeling this issue. Even past members of my own department have aided in this perception. The reality is, I'm going to skip this part. Basically, sometimes we feel hated and unwanted by our community. So I'm going to skip ahead to the good part. With all that said, I have recently found a beautiful new motivation to keep going. For about the last 3 years, I have been doing community engagement, officer wellness, and oversee MPD social work program. I am a crisis intervention team coordinator and focus on mental health issues and addiction in our community. My team does homeless outreach, harm reduction, opioid outreach, among many other things. I will be ensuring that officers in Delaware County get the best training available to deal with those in crisis. The Muncie Police Department is evolving. I attend neighborhood meetings, do talks in the community, and programming in our schools. Here's what I've learned. Most people do not hate us. Most people want to see us in their neighborhoods. People want to see us interacting with their children. People want to get to know us, and they appreciate the sacrifices that we make. People need us to be transparent and educate them in what we do each day. People want to feel safe inside their homes, at the parks, and at events. They love us to be present and to know that if something were to happen, that we would be there to help them. I have found a new love for my profession, and I see a new culture in my department. I love and respect my community, and I thank so many citizens for giving me this motivation. Our community was thirsting for us as a department to be more transparent and visible. Due to the fact that every department in the U.S. is suffering from manpower issues, for years we were struggling to have enough just to do the basics. We had to concentrate on training policies and making ourselves better. Even putting myself and my partner into the role that we have today was a huge sacrifice for our department. My administration supports the style of policing and is doing everything that they can to expand it. The men and women that I work with are seeing our community in a new light. Officers who would normally shy away from public events are realizing how rewarding they are. I have seen some of the most amazing interactions between the men and women on my department with our citizens. We need to see that not everyone hates us. The community needs to see that we are humans who took this job to serve them. They need to see us interacting with citizens in a positive and kind way. We need to see that our citizens just want the quality of life that they deserve. I hear citizens say that they would love to see officers stop and play a quick game of basketball with the kids in the park. I get requests for officers to attend events and give talks. Community leaders support us and encourage us. There is so much more we all want to do. But this takes funding. It takes officers, it takes manpower. It breaks my heart when I have to tell people I can't come to your event because I don't have enough officers. Because I've worked so hard and my team has worked so hard and they just don't get it. They don't get that I can't pull people from the road and I can't afford to pay them overtime. The days of 100 people applying for positions are over. Last hiring process I helped with, I think there were 10 and maybe 6 showed up, and that was a lot. Takes funding to pay the overtime, which I had already said. It's simple. If you wanted to be a cop, knowing what road you had ahead of you, wouldn't you start by choosing the department that would pay you the most? Right now, that's not the Muncie Police Department. This will get worse if our funding decreases or even stays the same. I fear the future of my social work program, our social work program, and the community engagement division on my department if funding issues aren't considered. I fear for the officers that are working 12-hour shifts with sometimes 10 officers serving our entire community. And please consider sometimes that could be 5 cars if you have an officer that can't be on their own yet, and that happens quite often. I fear that our training will become bare minimum as required, as you might see in other police departments. I cannot imagine our citizens not supporting financially this positive movement that I see happening between law enforcement and our community. I hope the time that I leave this career, the Muncie Police Department could have bettered their relationship with our community. I would love to have many more social workers. I would love to have many more interactions with youth in our community. Myself, my chiefs, we would love to have 10 community engagement officers. We would like to be able to have time to stop and play basketball with the kids, but we don't. We don't have enough people. We can't hire people because we're not paid enough. That's the bottom line. I would ask that in considering any issues with supporting our budget requests, which to be honest, I don't know, I'm clueless to. I hear what you're saying, but I just know how it makes us feel that it even has to be discussed that way. I've listened to the community, and I know this is what they want and what they support. Thank you, guys. Are there any questions?
Good evening, guys. My name is Jason Chafin. I'm the president of Muncie Firefighters Local 1348. First, I wanted to start out by saying thanks for putting the cops ahead of us because it stole all the thunder. But no, actually, I do want to thank, in serious, the administration, finance committee, Mr. Basham, who sat in all of our meetings throughout negotiations. You know, I mean, basically, up to this point, we've all worked together to find the monies to do what we can do as a city right now with what we have. You know, which is it enough? It's not enough. I mean, we kind of, you know, like and I can reiterate some of the things that we deal with. It's basically the same as the FOPs. We have lost 4 members since January 1, of this year. 3 of which were our trained paramedics that were trained, which is, big losses, and we'll continue to be a training ground. We'll continue to lose, our certified salaries, which is, again, a little bit more exact than the police because we don't have sheriffs and other people. Most every fire department in the city is a per 77 fund fire department. If they're a paid fire department, it's about 123 fire departments in the state of Indiana that's a paid fire department, and for the most part, they're all in perf. In 2023, before the 10% raise we got last year, we were 88th out of that 123. That's where we started in 2023. We got that 10% raise, and it jumped us to 64. This year with the 5%, we drop to 73 to 72. Why? 73 departments in the city of Indiana. Obviously, this is March, so we're already kind of behind the 8 ball, so we kind of know what everybody else has done because it took us a little bit longer to get to this point than most of the other cities in the state. 73 departments in the state of Indiana got 6% or more this year. 44 departments got over 10%. They brought up, President Qualls brought up Newcastle in Henry County. They passed a 0.5% lit and gave all their city employees, public safety included, a 31% raise over 2 years. The Newcastle Fire Department makes more money than Muncie Fire Department now they're about 7 spots ahead of us on that certified salary list now. They're 8 miles away. And they take way less runs than we do. We took 17,800 calls last year. Many of them were 1 hour plus calls, whether, medical transports to the hospital, house fires. These aren't 10-minute calls, 5-minute calls most of the time. These are these are, when we took 17,800 with a staff of 122 if we're fully staffed, which majority of the time we're not fully staffed. We took, and that ratio, 17,800 calls with 122 people, put us the busiest fire department in the state of Indiana. There's no one that can beat us, with that ratio. I mean, the departments that take more calls than us all have 400, 500, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, they all have hundreds more, South Bend, Evansville, they have hundreds more firefighters. And so per capita, we're the busiest department in the state of Indiana. Again, we thank everybody for what they've been able to do and what we can continue to keep working towards as a community. Make sure that we keep our people, we did a lot of things. We worked with the administration last year. We created what we called an in-house version of the certified physical agility testing. Because one way we found and one way we've pushed as a union and as administration is if we can get people to apply that live here in Muncie, they'll be less likely to leave, even with our pay being less. I mean, because they're taking care of their family members, they're taking care of their community.
Right.
So the way it worked prior to 2024, or maybe we got it done late 23, is to apply to the fire department anywhere in the state of Indiana, you had to have a CPAT card, is what they call it. It stands for Certified Physical Agility Test. And you take that card, and there's only a few places in Indiana where you could get one of these cards. One was in Indiana, outside Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Valparaiso. So the first step in applying to Muncie Fire Department was to go get a CPAT card. Those cards, I think they're up to over $200 a piece. You have to go do your drive somewhere, take a day off work, drive weekend day, whatever, take that, and then possess this physical agility card. So what we were seeing is only kids that could afford it and you really want to be a fireman, didn't want to be a Muncie fireman necessarily, but want to be a fireman, we go out and get these $200 cards and then apply everywhere. First come, we'll take, the first person that's want to hire us, we'll take that job. But if something better comes along, we'll lateral transfer right out, which was we were seeing happening over and over. So one small step we did, which I think is, hopefully continue being a large step, is we bought the equipment. We found room in our training facility to create our own. We went to the state and got it approved to do our own physical agility tests. Now we're not handing out cards, yet, but we have the equipment to mimic that test, to where every kid that applies for Muncie Fire Department only can come do that test for free right here in Muncie. So that was a big step we made, hopefully to recruit more Muncie kids in the coming days. Obviously our Fire Prevention Bureau goes out to the schools and does all that stuff to try to, we try to do activities every day that interacts with the community to try to get that, buy-in from the kids. We have kids in our fire trucks from high schools every day. The Career Center sends kids to our fire trucks and to our ambulances, religiously. We our training ground for paramedics that they go to IU paramedicine, so they do their ride time. We've recruited ourselves, some paramedics, that fresh out of school that, because of our partnership with IU Lifeline on their paramedic school. So we're doing the things we can to try to help recruit locally, but it's only gonna be so much. I mean, we've had Muncie kids that leave us for Fishers, and one, and the thing is, we're never gonna compete with the Carmel and the Fishers. I mean, we can keep passing taxes and we can keep going, and they just have things going on that we don't, and this generation of Muncie. But one thing we can do is continue to work, to get our pay as best as we can, and to where we're not losing people to South Madison. Well, two of the people that just left for South Madison Fire Territory, which basically covers small Pendleton, Indiana, and a couple small towns around them. They average about 3,000 calls a year, and they're beating us by almost $20,000. I mean, this 5%, and that's why you see this 5%, we're actually dropping. 10% next year if we get to those discussions and that comes through, we would it's still dents in the road, but again, we understand the community we work in. We love the community we work in. Most of us don't want to work in any other community, and we'll continue doing that work. And I'm here for any questions you guys have.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, and again, no one up here, and then we've had this conversation, everyone up here supports public safety.
Mhm.
Just to review the contract, it's a 2-year contract,
Yes, sir.
and the first year is the 5%.
Yep.
And then do you also,
Ours is a
actually-
little bit different than the FOPs
Thank you for
in the
explaining
sense
that.
of, obviously, if we don't pass any taxes. Then we go into, if we were to go into a negotiation next year and we know what's, we kind of looked at the financial picture and be like, well, what could the city afford? So ours is 3%, 10%. Next, it's a 2-year contract.
Mhm.
It's in 26, it's going to be 3% with no tax changes or 10% with tax changes.
Okay.
And I will harken back, the discussion I was listening to a minute ago with Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1 could force tax changes on us. It could do, as we know, Senate Bill 1, I mean, we're for our lobbyists, and
Yeah.
not always do our lobbyists at the State House, our PFFUI guys, our state guys, are on the same side as AIM, which is the city, which is the lobbyists for the cities. But on this issue, we're on the same side. I mean, we want to make sure that our counties and our cities aren't drastically impacted by this potential legislation. So obviously we got to watch that in these coming months, which could force our hands in some way. Luckily, we have been good stewards here in Muncie in the sense of taxes. We are the 69th lowest lit tax county in the state. There's 92 counties, only 11 of them have a lower lit tax than we have. We haven't raised ours since the 2015. It took effect, I think, 16, but it was 2015 when we did the passing of it. So that's almost a decade now. Every other county around us has did it multiple times, multiple times during that time. So that's why every other county around us has much higher rates than we do, which benefits those people in those counties because a lot of them drive here to work. So they're getting the best of both worlds because actually, if you own property, it gets offset by a lit tax. So those people that live in those counties surrounding us are getting a really good deal right now because they're paying lower property taxes, and then they come here to work and pay lower lit tax. So, obviously those are discussions for days to come, but I did have a little bit of statistics with me.
Mr. President, I just want to make one more comment.
Yeah.
One comment. Thank you so much. You have almost overwhelmed us with information, and everything I've asked, you have just provided it, Johnny, on the spot. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
You're welcome. And I'll continue to keep trying to do my best doing it.
Thank you.
Jerry.
Was your guys happy with the contract?
Yeah, I remember you asking Brandon that when he was up here. I can't remember our vote exactly, but it was a pretty overwhelming vote when we had the night of our ratification. I mean, again, we see, we're happy with a asterisk, I would say, because, we pass it and we're happy. Okay, we're getting, the 5%, maybe 10, maybe 15, and then we see, and then our buddies from other departments are like, yeah, we just got 31. Yeah, I mean, Bloomington just got 30. Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh man, maybe I'm not so happy anymore. I mean, so it's kind of a happy with an asterisk because we're seeing what's going on around us and we're thinking, ooh,
How many people?
it's like keeping up with the Joneses almost, and we struggle with that.
How many people have you lost?
We've lost 4 since January 1. That's just, that's just off the top of my head. I know since January 1, we've lost 4. Over the last few years, it's well over 20, 30, we've had our recruit class last year. Now, some of that was retirements, and losses, I think was 23. We hired last year in one big recruit class just to try to get us back up to staffing. We're getting ready to obviously hire more to try to replace the 4 that just left. So it's a never ending battle.
Are you below minimum staffing?
Well, minimum staffing is our daily, 20, contractual amount. So we always have the minimum staffing. It's just when we lose the overall numbers, then now the chiefs have to sit there and watch the overtime budget and those kind of things. And then, now you're going to save money on the line item that has salaries, but then eventually come the end of the year, if we run low, Chief Burford's going to be in front of you guys saying, I need money from this salary line item moved over to this overtime line item because we're paying less salaries, but we're paying more overtime. So it's kind of one of those balancing acts when we fall below our numbers. But obviously the training aspect, we have people on our lists to hire. Our last list, I think we still have, so our merit commission will probably be hiring, a few, I mean, assuming they still want the job, the candidates. But then we have probably anywhere from a 3 to 6 month training to get them on the street. So, I mean, so every time we lose somebody, that big gap of getting them trained and ready for the street has to be replicated every time.
I'd like to thank you and Mr. Qualls for you guys' thing on the contract, participating in that contract, getting a good contract for the guys.
Thank you.
May I?
Oh.
Thank you. Could you provide us as council and the public? I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Mr. Deegan about your salaries. Where does it run? I need data on, if you don't mind, if you want to send it to me or to the whole council. I need comparisons between lit taxes in other cities and the increase. I mean, I know I could do it, but
I will have it for you.
And then I need to
Tomorrow.
see numbers, right? And
Absolutely.
charts
I will have it
and
tomorrow.
every data. And then I would appreciate it if the Muncie Fire Department would do the same, put that information out there for the public on your website.
We absolutely will.
And then I would recommend both for the Muncie Police and for the firefighters to create some kind of brochure or kind of
Absolutely.
campaign. So when we're having these discussions, the public is aware.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we did last time. I think Ms. Powell was probably the only one still on the, Jerry, you guys remember, we did that last time.
Okay,
We'll do it again this time.
thank you.
Anytime obviously you guys are in the difficult position based on the population of Muncie. You guys are also the taxing authority.
Okay.
But again, the county, I watch their budget cycle, Commissioner, Brand's here, we,
One more.
this tax is a county tax, not a city tax, but it's I watch their budget hearings, they struggle just like we struggle, but yeah, so this will definitely be a conversation that we have to have in the public with everyone.
Okay, so the other part of your campaign or your information that I'd like to see, like if you make 30,000, what percent? I know you're gonna throw percent, but a lot of people need to see numbers. You can say it's only this percent. If we
Right.
pay this percent, I want people to know how much is that in dollar amount taken
Absolutely.
weekly or every other week, please?
Yeah, and
Because that
obviously,
makes more
It
sense.
absolutely makes sense. And,
Thank you.
and obviously it would change, someone making 100,000
Absolutely.
versus someone making 40,
Yeah.
Or less,
Okay.
And then basically we know just from our previous lit tax that,
Yeah.
for every basically quarter that it raises, that you raise it would generate, like I think we raised it, would generate, somewhere around $3.5 million.
Right.
So we have, I think the limit is 3% or a little over 3% is the limit we have. We're at, again, we have over half of our lit tax that we unused, which is obviously we're 69th out of 92 counties. So we did a really good job keeping it low as possible. We've only used it one time, other than the edit that was built in, since the inaction of it, which was with property taxes. So as you raise it each quarter, it's about, like I say, around $3.5 million, and we still have 1.5% to spend. Now, again, a 10% raise wouldn't need 1.5%. We're not asking, nor would we ask for 1.5%. That would be, because again, that would be kind of like, throwing your touchdown Hail Mary. Now we're done. And if any future problems like a Senate Bill 1 comes up, we've already tied our hands. Can't do that. So, obviously a 10% raise, we're talking about a 0.25% raise to a 50% raise, and that'd be discussions with you guys, the county, all of us on what the raise would need. And then obviously we got to sit back and watch Senate Bill 1 and see if that affects the need to raise it as well, because it looks like the way they've kind of, at least our governor has said, we're going to pass this and you guys got to deal with it.
And the last time the fire department did go out into the community and the police department as well.
Mhm.
And I think that what Councilperson Selvey had said in regards to a pamphlet, I think we actually used like those totals into real objects. Like this is going to be like a 20-ounce Coke or whatever it was.
Right.
So those would be very useful
Mhm.
if and when that discussion comes up. And also really quickly, I don't want to slight President Qualls. He also is very willing to give us information regarding his contract. It's just President Chafin like overwhelmed with spreadsheets, and you could click different tabs, and so that's the reason. That's the reason. Hire him out because he's.
Hey, And then I call Brandon and I make sure he gets.
Exactly. So I didn't want you to feel like you did not, the police department did an excellent job as well. The FOP did an excellent job as well. And I passed everything on to the rest of the council committee. But I'm used to your spreadsheet, so I appreciate that. Thank
You're welcome.
Any other questions? for President?
We have a commissioner, a Delaware County commissioner here. I'm going to put you on the spot, if you don't mind. I just want to thank the Delaware County commissioners for their latest resolution regarding, that was a very great move on your part, and hopefully we will emulate it on city council and come alongside of you in support. Would you please come up to, if that's okay with you, to explain exactly what you guys did and what your resolution was all about? And thank you for that, doing that.
So Stephen Brand, Delaware County Commissioner, which ordinance?
The
are-
one regarding the tax caps with from
The budget.
the budget.
Was that the
That,
council?
I think that was the.
That was
council
county council.
commissioner.
County
Council.
commissioner,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I wish I could take credit, but I cannot.
Oh, it was the county. Okay. Would you thank them for us? Thank
I will.
you.